Hello, I'm Herrin. Today I'd like to give you a brief insight into my life and my testimony. Born into a Christian family, I can't say that I always was a Christian. I had a very strong head knowledge, but not a very good heart knowledge. I made a profession of faith at an early age, but quickly realized as the older I got, the less I knew the Savior that I know today. At the age of 16, listening to a radio broadcast called Unshackled, I made a real profession of faith, realizing that I was a sinner and lost and on my way to hell. After that, I began to serve in the local church, but was distracted by things of this world and already wicked mind. Leaving the Christian faith, I branched out into the world and started sowing wild roots. Unfortunately, that would take hold of my life for several years until I realized that I was nothing without Christ and nothing without a church family. Shortly after I came back to Christ, I began to feel a call and pull in my life into ministry. But the Lord had other plans at that moment. I met and married my lovely bride Ashley in 2008. In December of 2008, I went into the military and served for 10 years in the United States Air Force. Getting to tour the world and moving to Washington State as far away as family as possible, I began to plant roots in church and to serve God, trying my best to figure out what He had in store for our lives. It was during this time that I was deployed multiple times to Afghanistan in 4 locations. In 2012, I went to Afghanistan on my first tour. During this time, it was some of the worst fighting in the southern provinces of Afghanistan. And those memories have been etched on my mind. But one of the verses that remain that Christ gave to me was the verse in Matthew 10:28. It says, "And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear Him that is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." I was able to hold on to that verse and finish my first tour. But then shortly after that, I was called again back to the northern provinces of Afghanistan in 2013 and 2014 to serve another tour. Again, we were thrust into combat zones, flying combat missions, and I was diagnosed at that time with post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, and a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury. The entire time I was over there, God gave me another verse. In John 15:13, it says, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friend." At that moment, I realized that my life may be expected of me, and I was fully comprehending the fact that it easily could be taken. And what in the world would my family do without me? Not knowing then what God had in store, He gave me another verse in Jeremiah 29, verse 11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." I then began to backslide again in the Christian faith, losing roots. I moved from Washington State to Florida, but in that move I told my wife that one thing had to happen. We had to have a church home. And that's when we started coming in August of 2017 to Avalon Baptist Church. As we began to serve in little pockets of the church and in individual ministries, I noticed the Lord again really calling me and asking me when I was going to serve Him and when I was going to fully give my life to Him. In trying to follow God in obedience, I realized that I had not been baptized since my salvation at 16. I asked Pastor Matt shortly after coming to Avalon to be baptized and explained to him my salvation testimony. Another year would go by before I realized God's calling on my life, and trying to take different jobs and chase money to get away from God's calling. I finally surrendered on March 31st when Pastor Matt said that he needed help in the church. And that's when God gave me another verse. In Isaiah 6:8 it says, "Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me." Finally, I settled down, quit my job, and surrendered full-time to the ministry, serving you in Avalon Baptist Church. The last verse that God has given me before this journey started is John 15:5. It says, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. Even through the trials and difficulties and running from God, He is still using me. Much like David, Abraham, Isaac, and many other Bible characters, even though they had made mistakes in their life, God forgave them. Remember, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.